All right. Hey, guys. This is it. This is prepping for Passover. I hope everybody is doing well. Charna, welcome. Donna, welcome.
Hello.
And Yaakov, welcome. Anna, welcome from Vancouver, right?
Yes, that's it.
Welcome back. It's great to have you. It's been a little bit. It's been a few months.
It's been a little while, but I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Me too. Me too. Happy that you're here. David, welcome. It's great to have you.
Yeah.
And Lisa. Is Lisa? Yes, Lisa's connected with the audio, so you can hear me. Welcome you. Welcome. It is great to have you here. We're expecting a few more, so as they come in, we will welcome. We have a lot to talk about, and this is going to be a lot of fun tonight. It's going to be an interactive experience. I'm hearing a little bit of noise. I'm going to mute everybody just so it's nice and quiet background. Again, unmute at any point in time. We're going to go through a lot of stuff. I'll tell some stories. We'll get some insights. We'll do some halacha, Kabbalah, the Jewish law, Jewish mysticism. Everything's going to combine together. Let me, before I continue telling you what we're doing, let's officially start. All right. Whew, take a deep breath. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, a very formal welcome to Prepping for Passover. This is our pre-Passover extravaganza. And the reason that I say that is because, as I mentioned a moment ago, we have so much to talk about, so much to explore, from the legal to the philosophical to the practical to the mystical and everything in between. Passover is coming up in just a few days, end of this week. Saturday night is the first Seder. So this is the perfect time to start thinking about, well, not maybe start, but to really kick our prep into full gear. So I'm glad you're with me tonight. I need to show you right off the bat. I have my matzah, one of the boxes of matzah. I'm holding it carefully because, you know, we don't want to break the matzah as I handle it. This is matzah that is from Brooklyn. That says, I'll tell you what it says on that sticker. Oh, it says fresh, tasty. All right, I'll be the judge of that. It says baked in the USA for Shapiro's Quality Matzah Center. Mashkiach al-fias hamatzos mitalmidei Lubavitch. Basically, it is Chabad friendly matzah, but also because we love hybrid matzot. This has got the little new square. Can you hold on? Yeah, that's the English version. Can you guys see that up there, new square?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Don't be confused with old square. This is totally new square, which is a nice Jewish community up in New York. So this is my matzah sample. I am not going to open it up tonight. I am saving it for Pesach, saving it for Passover. I have for my family, we have some extended family that we're connecting with. We have, I want to say 25, 35, somewhere around 35 pounds of matzah. A lot of matzah. Yes, it's a lot of matzah, my friends. 35 pounds of matzah. And then you wonder after Pesach, why am I feeling a little bit more bulky? Because it was the 35 pounds of matzah. It's got to go somewhere. You don't have to have 35 pounds of matzah. Tonight, we're going to discuss exactly what makes for a kosher and meaningful Seder experience. So let us begin. But first, the story. There was a man whose name was Reb Moshe. Reb Moshe was an advisor to the king. The king wasn't Jewish. This is going back hundreds of years. The king wasn't Jewish, the European king. And Moshe was the advisor because, you know, throughout history, many kings have had Jewish advisors, and it's worked out well, you know, on occasion. So everything's good until one day the king says to Moshe, you're my trusted advisor, my most trusted advisor. I love you, you know, so dearly, but it's not a good look. It's not working out anymore. This whole relationship is not working out. I can't have you in such a high position not being Jewish. Being Jewish and not being affiliated with the church. You got to convert. You got to convert to Christianity, Catholicism, whatever it is, right? You have to convert to be officially under the church. So Moshe, with a heavy heart, weighs his options. He didn't seem like he had too many options. And so indeed he goes through with the conversion. And there you go. Moshe is now, what would we call him? Not Moshe, but maybe, what are we calling him?
Michael.
Michael. Good. I know many Jews, Michael, but yeah, it's not as Jewish sounding, at least as Moshe. So now he's Michael. Michael, the church follower as well. All right. And so it goes for a number of months, but every day the guilt gets bigger and bigger. The Jewish guilt is growing within him, and he can't take it anymore. And finally, one day he bursts into the king's chambers and he says, "King, well, Your Majesty." I'm sure he was something a little bit more formal. "Your Majesty, listen, I know we did this arrangement and this conversion, but I can't be inauthentic. I can't not be true to myself any longer. I can't live this lie. I am a Jew, and forever a Jew I'll be, and I need to reclaim my identity as a Jew." The king is very understanding. "I understand how difficult this must have been for you, etc. Okay, no problem. I will let you resume or re-embrace your Jewishness. No problem." He was prepared for the worst. This is good news. The king is understanding. Baruch Hashem, thank God. He goes home. He tells his wife, "You won't believe it. The king accepted, this whole change back to Judaism thing. Thank God we can live as Jews once again." His wife gets a very angry look, and she looks at him and she says, "Moshe, it's a week before Pesach. You couldn't have waited till after Pesach. You're doing all the cleaning this year. You wanted to be Jewish now, this week. That's it. You're doing all the cleaning." All right. That's a joke. L'chaim, everybody. First of all, on LaCroix Pamplemousse, not kosher for Pesach beverage. Cheers. All right. Here's the deal. Tonight, we're going to talk about Pesach. We're going to talk about how we prepare for Pesach. It's the week before Passover. Today's Sunday night, or this is Sunday night. Passover, the Seder, is Saturday night. We got a full week to get our prep going. That is the objective of this session. First thing I need to mention is that the Seder, the highlight of Passover is, of course, the Passover Seder. In Israel, they have one Seder. The first night of Passover, which will be Saturday night, they have a Seder, and that is it, one and done. In the diaspora, i.e. outside of the land of Israel, we have two Seders. This is the way it's been for thousands of years. In Israel, one Seder; outside of Israel, two Seders. The two Seders are, at least for us, out of Israel, the two Seders are equally as important. So it's definitely first Seder is very important, but second Seder is also important. So the ideal is to get two Seders going. So that's one point. Second point, the Seders have always been very well observed Jewish observances. I don't, other than Yom Kippur, I don't know of any Jewish thing that's as, I don't know, popular, well observed as the Passover Seder, Pesach Seder. It's like Yom Kippur and Passover Seder, those are like the two highlights. I think Hanukkah has been gaining in recent years. Have you noticed that? So gesund, Karen. Hanukkah has been, listen, even though you're muted, I can still see. So I think Hanukkah has been gaining, and it's definitely a fun holiday, and it's got, it's a good time of year, etc. But not that notwithstanding, I believe that the Passover Seder is way up there as one of the most, if not the most observed Jewish ritual. And it's for a good reason. It's because it's so significant. There's so many mitzvot that are rolled into one experience. It's talk about a rich Jewish experience. It's like it doesn't get any richer than the Passover Seder. In fact, I want to share with you a story that I think is very meaningful. Let me see how I can do this. Let me pull this up for y'all. Okay. Okay. Tell me, can you? Yeah, do you guys see that? Prepping for Passover. Nice little cover slide. Okay, I don't think we're going to do this. Let's skip that. Okay, here we go. I want to share with you this story. I'm going to read the story And I think it's very beautiful. This is from the Vahingen, I may not be pronouncing that correct, concentration camp, Passover 1943. So one camp resident, Moshe Pearl, related. The people in the camp were already used to their miserable situation. They saw death before their eyes, but they asked, where could we get flour? How could we bake matzah? Again, this is 1943 in a concentration camp. Shortly before Passover, one of the SS men in the camp entered my workshop. This is Moshe Pearl telling the story, where I painted signs. He asked me to make dummy targets for target practice. Just then, an idea flashed through my mind. I claimed that I would need flour, lots of flour, to paste the pictures of soldiers on the targets. He asked how much flour. I said that I would need 5 kilograms. He liked my suggestion and immediately gave me an appropriate referral. The Jews of the Vahingen concentration camp went to work baking the matzah in secret, even though they knew that they would die if they were caught. They baked the matzah in the oven in Pearl's workroom, keeping the door and windows sealed. When the night of the Seder came, 20 Jews managed to pull off a Seder where, aside from the matzah, they ate potatoes and drank homemade wine, which consisted of water and sugar. They even managed to read the Haggadah. While the Nazis succeeded in destroying so many Jewish lives, they failed to destroy the Jewish life from these Jews on that Passover. That's a story that is written up by Rabbi Yankee Tauber. It's published on Chabad.org, and it's a well-known Passover story going back to the Holocaust and the concentration camps. And it's just one of many stories that relate essentially the Jewish devotion, dedication to pull off a Seder, to do the Seder under any and all circumstances. And by the way, you may be wondering, how could a person in a concentration camp experience a Seder and declare, then we were slaves, today we are free, right? We say that in the Seder, in the Haggadah, right? Back then, Avodim Hayinu, back in the day, we were slaves. But today, thank God, we're free. Can you imagine saying those words in a concentration camp? I mean, the contradiction, the paradox is striking. And I don't know that I really want to get into the philosophy of it right now. I think maybe as we unfold tonight's discussion, we will get into some of that. But just note this essential core point that throughout history, under any and all circumstances, Jews have been fiercely committed to Passover, to the Seder, and honestly, clinging to that idea of freedom, even when it's being so ripped away from one's hands, to hold on to that and say, we are free, because I guess I'll mention a little bit now, because there's certain elements that can't be taken away unless they're given up by the person, right? You can only take away certain things, but you can't take away the essential stuff unless the person chooses to give that away. All right, so that's kind of like as an overview. Now, when it comes to the experience of Passover, so we know that Passover and the Seder has been observed throughout history for the last 3,300 years, throughout Jewish history. We also know that historically, Passover has been observed at home. So yeah, the last year, this year, the amount of public and communal Seders, or the amount of people going out to communal Seders, certainly not last year at all, but this year it's definitely at a lower number of people that are going to participate in a kind of community synagogue or community center based Seder. And sometimes we might think, well, it's not the same if we're not amongst many people. However, the truth is, the Seder that we do harkens back to the original Seder that the Jews had in Egypt. And jump in and unmute yourself if you can tell me in the context, what context did they have that original Seder? Where did that original Seder take place? Unmute if you know the answer. Jump right in. In Egypt, what was the context?
It was in their home the night they were leaving.
In their homes, right? In fact, the Torah specifies, thank you, David, the Torah specifies multiple times that they're meant and obligated to eat that meal, that final meal, and I'm not going to call it the Last Supper, whatever, but the final meal I think I just did, in Egypt. They were meant to have the Paschal lamb with the matzah and the mar. We'll talk about that soon, and how we kind of replicate that nowadays. But they were meant to have that in their homes, with their families. And it's only if the family in that home cannot polish off the full lamb that they should invite another family over, and join together. But otherwise, it was meant to be done in their homes with their families, which means that Passover is primarily a home-based observance. So I know many enjoy being part of a communal Seder. Some people don't. Some people enjoy just being at home with family or with themselves or with friends. Some people enjoy a more communal thing. Listen, the situation is what it is. We are where we are. And thank God, hopefully things are going to slowly open up and improve for the better with good health and at the right time. But we shouldn't feel like it's not a Passover because we can't get together and, or we're not going to get together in the shul with 100 people. The reality is that Passover primarily is a home-centered ritual. So that's the second point. Number one, it's been observed throughout the millennia. Number two, it's primarily in the home. Here's the third point that I want to share with you in this opening. That is that Passover is not just a celebration of an event that happened 3,300 years ago. The Passover primarily is a re-experience. Oh, hey, Nussin. How's it going? Hey, all right. Hey, oh, and Riva. Wow, everybody's just jumping in. You want to jump in on this? It's good to see you. All right, Passover is primarily Riva, say hi. Hi. There you go. Are you ready for Pesach? You want to get more ready for Pesach? Yeah. Do you know what this is right here in that box? Ooh. Matzah? Oh, yeah. Very good. Good. Excellent. Yeah, it has a little image of a matzah on that. Very good. Can't get anything by you. Not that we would want to.
I know it's on Pesach. So.
Yeah, we're gonna be very careful with it because we don't want to get comments. All right. So so the third point, again, Passover has been observed throughout the ages. It's a primarily home-based experience. And the third point is that it's more than just a recollection of an ancient episode. It's all about re-experiencing a certain energy and a dynamic that we can tap into today. And that's a really important thing. A Passover is just a thing that happened. Well, yeah, okay, it happened. It's history. But Passover, Pesach, is not just a historical event. It's a dynamic. It's an energy. It's a concept. It's a thing. And that thing, that energy, that dynamic can be tapped into today. This is a theme that I spoke about for a little bit this morning at Kabbalah and Coffee, but it's something that I'll just mention again right now. Passover is all about freedom. Passover is about liberation from what holds us back. And that was true then with Pharaoh and slave mentality on a literal level, but it's also true for us today. And so as we get ready for Passover, let's remember that it's not just, all right, we're celebrating someone else's get out of jail card. Like, okay, how many times can we do that? How many years can we do the same commemoration? It is about that commemoration, but it's also equally and maybe even more important that we internalize it and recognize that as we recall that liberation, we're working on our own right now in the current day and age today. Like, we got stuff that we need to break out of. And this is a way to tap into that energy, into that cosmic energy, and come back. So now I'm going to talk about time for just a moment related to this concept. There are different theories about time. Some ancient philosophers believe that time was cyclical. In other words, that history repeats itself and there's really no forward progress that's happening. That's my forward progress, as I grab the mic, grab the camera. We're not moving forward. It's not linear. It's just cyclical. Same thing, same people, same stories again and again and again, and a little hamster wheel of time. All right, that's a bit of a depressing view of time, but so it was that many philosophers believed in that. Some believed in a concept of linear time. No, that there's a progression, a beginning, a middle, and an end. Judaism fundamentally believes in linear time, maybe even introduced the concept of linear time, i.e. that there is a beginning in the beginning, right? The Torah begins in the beginning, and that there is a destination that we're headed to. But Judaism is a little bit more nuanced. Even as it's linear, it also goes around in circles. We also can reattach ourselves to energies that have come up in the past, which makes it more along the lines of not a circle, not a straight line, but rather a spiral. Think of a spring, right? That kind of loops around as it moves forward. So time, as we move forward, we are advancing, but as we loop around through time, we cross over similar patterns that have been crossed over before. So the pattern that we're crossing over right now this week, going into next weekend, is freedom and liberation. It behooves us to understand it, tap into it, prepare for it. And that's part of what we're going to do tonight, is get ourselves in that mindset and understand how to do that, which reminds me of a story. I love this story. It's a parable, but it's a really great parable. There's once a wealthy man who had a custom to invite anyone who wanted, anyone who didn't have a meal, to his house. Beautiful mansion. And he had, every night he had the most lavish of foods out, and whoever wanted, called dichvin yesav yechel, as we say in the Seder, whoever wants, whoever's hungry, come and eat. And that was it. But he had even a more unique minhag, a more unique custom, even than just giving everybody a delicious meal. And that is, after dinner was over, any item on the table could be taken. A piece of cutlery, a napkin, or whatever it is, a plate, whatever you want, one item you can take. Not a bad deal, right? Take one thing. I'm pretty sure that, I mean, I was told that hotels have the same thing, right? You go in, you take either a towel or a robe or this. I'm joking. I don't need any calls from Hilton or Marriott or Hyatt or whatever. All right. Yeah, just joking. But that was this guy's minhag. Meanwhile, at the meal, what he would used to do is he would, he had a wait staff, butlers and waiters and whatnot. He had a crystal bell, and he rang the bell, and that called the staff and they would bring out the food. He would ring the bell. They cleaned up the food. Bell again. They brought the second course up. So there was once a poor individual who was at the table who said, "Everyone's grabbing a plate, a napkin, a plate, a fork, a knife, a spoon, whatever. I'm going to take the bell, because look what the bell does. You shake the bell, all the food comes out. You shake the bell, they clean up. You shake right? It's the bell is where the magic is happening." So when the meal is done and the host says, "Take whatever you want." And this man, a very smart guy, he says, "Is your bell available?" I said, "I've never been asked that before." "It is. Are you sure you want the bell?" He says, "Absolutely." And he thinks he got the steal of a lifetime. He got the deal of a lifetime. He gets the bell. He's got everything. That's the key to the castle right there. All right. He gives him the crystal bell. He figures he'll have to order a new one on Amazon, whatever. But this guy wants the bell. Give him the bell. So he gives him the bell. The guy comes home. And the next thing you know, he invites all of his friends who are likewise always looking for a meal. He says, "Come to my house tomorrow night. I am going to have a meal that knocks your socks off." And they're like, "Really? Rabbi, really? Like you got?" He's like, "Yeah, don't worry. I got this." "You sure?" "Yeah." Okay. They all show up. He's got a table, a few tables put out. "Hey, Howard, hey, Charna, no food on the table. Nothing's on the table," right? And everyone's looking around like, "What's the plan here? Like, what's the plan, Stan? There's no food. There's no smell of food, and nothing is ready." So he says, "I'd like to welcome you to this meal." And he pulls out the bell and he shakes the bell. He rings the bell. Everyone's looking around super awkwardly. Nothing happens. Rings the bell again. Nothing happens. He's thinking to himself, I got scammed. I got the wrong bell. So he very, very embarrassed. He apologizes. Everyone goes home. He immediately that night, he marches straight over to the wealthy man's house. And he says, "I cannot believe what you did. You gave me the wrong bell. You gave me the wrong bell. It's bait and switch. I want the real bell." And the man says, what exactly happened? "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Yeah, I rang the bell and nothing happened." He's like, "The bell doesn't create the food, right? It doesn't create the wait staff. It just calls them to attention." This is a parable. I'm not suggesting it ever happened. What I am suggesting is that it actually, I believe, I love this parable. I think it does hold a lot of messaging. And honestly, you could use this for many things, many Jewish concepts. Oftentimes we end up ringing the bell and not focusing on the superficial and not focusing on the essential. Are you with me on that? Yeah. For example, like Kabbalah speaks about making a living, how going to work is making a vessel, but the blessing that goes into the vessel is coming from God. So only work without the spiritual connection is like ringing the bell from today to tomorrow. You can ring the bell, but you need the input from the higher source. Anyway, that's one example. But in our context tonight, hey, Sandrine, welcome. In our context tonight, the way I want to use this is that there are a lot of rituals with Passover. Yes, there are a lot of rituals with Passover. And when it comes to Passover, there's a lot of, pragmatic, a lot of ringing the bell. But in addition to ringing the bell, we need to know why we're ringing the bell and what's the story behind the bell. Are you with me? It's not just about ringing the bell. It's not just about leaning. It's not just about drinking 4 cups of wine. It's just about eating the matzah, right? Is it the matzah or is it the box? Sometimes it's hard to tell. I'm joking. I didn't mean to disparage the matzah. But anyway, the point is that there's a lot behind the ritual. And tonight we are going to explore that. Welcome, Susan. So without further ado, I want to speak to you about the 8 core, give or take, 8 core ideas about the Seder. 8 core elements of your Passover Seder. These are not 8 steps of the Seder itself. These are not, you'll see how I divide this. These are 8 things to general themes that happen at the Seder. Number 1, and maybe this is the most important item. At the Seder, we tell the story of Egypt, the slavery and the Exodus. We tell the story. Fundamentally, the night of the Seder, the night of Passover, is about retelling the story. Fundamentally, that's what it is. So that's a major theme, and that is theme number 1. I'm actually going to share my screen with you so that you can see this. I'm going to go through some of these slides. We'll go through them together. Okay, so number 1, we have the mitzvah of retelling the story of the Exodus. It comes from the biblical verse. The biblical verse says, in Exodus, you shall tell your son on that day, your child on that day, saying, because of this, God did this for me when I went out of Egypt. In other words, at the Seder, we're supposed to retell the story. That's number 1. Number 2, like any good story, it's meant to be a rags to riches story. I'm going to say that again. Like any good story, you have to build a drama, which means you have to start in a difficult spot and then get to the grand finale where they live happily ever after. That's the way that we tell the story. As the the Mishnah tells us, you begin with the negative, with the shame, which is pretty much understood to be the notion of slavery or idolatry even, and you conclude with glory. So you start from my father was a wandering Aramean until he completes the whole passage. Anyway, that's what the Mishnah says. The bottom line is we start on a low, we end on a high, or like I want to call it, rags to riches, humble beginnings to a great finale, a great ending. Are you with me on this? So number 1, we tell the story. How do we tell the story? Do it in a dramatic way. Don't just say, oh, God freed us. Whoa, you cut out the whole drama. Give me some of the background. Give me some of what precipitated this. What was going on? What was Pharaoh like? Give me some juice over there. All right, that's that. The next point is that as we tell the story, it's also meant to be done as a dialogue. This is the next element of criteria in telling the story on Seder night. It's meant to be a dialogue of question and answer. Take a look again from Exodus. You shall tell your son on this day. In other words, it's meant to be done in a way of a question, maybe from the child, maybe not from the child, maybe from yourself even, but it's meant to be done in a bit of a question and answer fashion, meant to be a dialogue. That's why, famously, at the Seder, all right, let me stop sharing so I can see all y'all. What do we do at the Seder that evokes dialogue? Unmute. What do you do at the Seder?
Questions.
The 4 questions. Yeah, the 4 questions, right? Even if you're doing a Seder yourself, even if you're the only person in the room, you ask the questions and then you answer them. Why? It's meant to be a dialogue. The higata levincha means you should tell, but you should also answer your child or the inner child. It's meant to be a dialogue. So 3 points so far. They're all related. They're all complementary. Point number 1, you got to tell the story. How? Rags to riches. How? In the form of dialogue. Are you with me so far? Point 1, 2, 3. The next point is at the Seder, we also have some things that we need to do in addition to telling the story, and that is eating certain things. We eat the matzah, we eat the maror, and we commemorate the Paschal lamb that we don't eat because we don't have the offering, because we don't have a temple, but we commemorate it, as we'll see. So again, that's the next 3 points. First 3 points were about telling the story. The next 3 points are about the food. We eat matzah, the traditional, I'm doing it so carefully so as not to crack the matzah in the box. We eat the matzah, the traditional flat bread that harkens back to that original food that they ate in Egypt, which was called matzah. We eat maror, which is the bitter herbs, which reminds us of the bitter experience that they had in Egypt. It was also commanded on that night of the Exodus to eat matzah and maror and a Paschal lamb when you can, because they were also commanded to eat a Paschal lamb on that night. So we're also commemorating the original night of the Exodus, where they were told to eat matzah with maror and some Paschal lamb. And so that's what we do. We eat matzah, we eat maror, we commemorate the Paschal. We don't eat the Paschal lamb. We commemorate the Paschal lamb. We could eat a brisket, but we commemorate the Paschal lamb with an item on the Seder plate, which we'll talk about soon, which we don't eat, but we have at least a commemoration of that. So that's the next 3 items. So first 3 items pertain to telling the story. The next 3 items pertain to food or commemoration of food. With me so far in the structure? Okay, the next item, number 7, 3, 3, 6, plus 1, is now 4 cups of wine. So this is not something that we're eating, but we're drinking. I guess it's also part of food and beverage, but I'm just separating it out. So the next item, this is rabbinic in origin. It's not biblical. The matzah, the maror, and the Paschal lamb, they're all biblical origin. That was told by God to Moses to tell the people on that original Passover, and they would do that on an annual basis when there was a temple. So today we just do the matzah and maror, not the Paschal lamb, but all of that has a biblical source. But the 4 cups of wine are not divinely, biblically mandated. They are rabbinic in origin. And the rabbis instituted 4 cups of wine to commemorate 4 expressions of redemption that the Torah uses. So the Torah says 4 different ways of talking about redemption. And so to commemorate those 4 different types of redemption, we have 4 cups of wine. It kind of punctuates the meal. If we're doing so much eating, we should probably have a little bit of beverage as well, a little bit of wine. And so it's punctuated, the Seder is punctuated with 4 cups of wine, which are symbolically aligned with 4 expressions of redemption. And in addition to all of this, there are other observances that we do at the Seder, including saying the Kiddush to get the things, to get the meal started, lighting the holiday candles to get the holiday started, saying a blessing after the meal, like you do any meal. So there are certain observances that are done at the Seder because that's a normative part of Jewish observance. So there's certain things that are done exclusively for the night of Passover, certain things that are done because it's a holiday, and this is what we do for holidays in general, and the amalgam of which produces the Seder that we know and love. So I haven't yet gone through the steps of the Seder, which we'll go through soon as a refresher and to go a little bit deeper in that. So that will go through soon, but I wanted to give you the essential elements that drive the Seder, right? The essential elements are, number 1, tell the story. Tell it in a dramatic way, from rags to riches, from a low point to a high point, right? Build up to the dramatic redemption. Tell it in a way of dialogue, get the kids involved, get the inner child involved, questions, answers, right? That's the method of conversation. Eat matzah, eat mar. Matzah is the flat bread, mar bitter herbs. Commemorate the Paschal Lamb. Drink 4 cups of wine, rabbinic in origin, and a potpourri of other things that we do because it's a holiday, and that's what we usually do for holidays or technical Jewish law. After meal, we say grace after meal. So those are the other elements that kind of round out the experience. Make sense? Yeah. So my goal is to take, when we get into the nitty gritty and go through the Seder, it can sometimes seem a little overwhelming, and also maybe like, why are we doing all this stuff? But when you zoom out a little bit, you realize, okay. And by the way, if I had to essentially boil it down, I would say it's 2 things. Well, maybe 3, but I want to stick with 2. Tell the story and eat the foods. That's kind of what it is, right? Tell the story, right? Different ways, and eat the foods that are biblical, rabbinic, whatever, that are commemorating this event. That's it. And then, follow the other instructions. That's pretty much what the Seder is. It's not just about ringing the bell. It's about the meaning behind the ringing of the bell, right? It's not just, ring the bell for the sake of ringing the bell. It's about understanding that this is holding a lot of meaning for us, and it's a deep experience. So that's the goal now as we go through the items of the Seder plate and the steps of the Seder. Let's keep that in mind, that each of these has a lot of significance. Now, before I do that, before I go into the items, we're going to do a few more things. We're going to go around the Seder plate itself, and then we're going to go through the order of the Seder. Seder actually means order, but we're going to go through the steps, step by step, and then round it out with some stories that have a lot of meaning, I think, and a lot of relevance. But before we move on to the next steps. Any questions or comments thus far? Jump in. Questions? Or yes, Donna.
Excuse me. So you mentioned the 4 cups of wine is rabbinic instruction.
Right.
When did Elijah's cup tradition come about?
Good. Excellent. Elijah's cup. I may have a source. Give me a second. Elijah's cup. The earliest known source to mention Elijah's cup dates back to approximately the year 1470.
Relatively recent.
Right, but that's not necessarily saying that it only started in 1470, but that the earliest printed source that talks about it that we found is 1470. But it's very possible that it's an older tradition that wasn't necessarily written about until then. In other words, it was kind of like, it's done, it's something that we do, or it's something that everyone knew to do, but maybe it wasn't written down formally, until that point. So how far, we know for sure 1470 it's written about. How much beyond that? And we'll get into why Elijah's cup, but it's definitely rabbinic, or it's not even obligatory. It's more of a custom. So the 4 cups of wine are a rabbinic obligation. Elijah's cup is more of a tradition, which is a little bit different. There's like different levels. There's biblical law, there's rabbinic law, there's rabbinic suggestion, there's tradition, there's custom. It's like all these different areas, the combination of which we know is the mosaic of Jewish practice. But, each one is a little bit different. So matzah on Passover is biblical. The 4 cups of wine that we drink, rabbinic obligation. Elijah's cup, tradition. So different levels of whatever, of, I don't know what you would call it, but different origins of the different pieces. Okay.
Yeah. So what did you say the 8th core idea is?
Oh, the 8th core idea. Yes. Good question. The 8th is more of a catch-all of other things that are done because it's a holiday, because we had a meal. So for example, lighting the holiday candles before the Seder, we do that because it's a holiday. Or reciting the blessing, the grace after meals, after we eat the meal during the middle of the Seder. That's not exclusive to Passover. That's something we do every time we have a meal, right? Every Shabbat, we also say grace after meal. So we do that as well on Passover, and it's part of the Haggadah. But that's the last category, would be things that would be more general Jewish observances and more general Jewish traditions that pertain to either holidays in general or just Jewish ritual thing. Or for example, washing the hands before we eat the matzah. We always wash our hands before we eat the hamotzi, the challah. So we don't have challah, we have matzah, so we also wash our hands. So it's not exclusive to Passover, but it is part of the Seder. So that's the 8th category.
Okay.
Yeah, so 3 categories pertaining to the story, 3 pertaining to foods and commemoration, the 1 pertaining to drink, 4 cups of wine, and the final one is general Jewish ritual, law, etc. Okay, either for the holiday or just for life, that are part of the Seder because it's the thing. Now, I think we're ready. Oh, one more thing. So we're going to go through now. I said 2 major areas of focus: the Seder plate items, and I just made a circle for like the Seder plate, and then the steps of the Seder itself. So very important. You have a week now. We all have a week now, right? Sunday night. So you have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. You got a bunch of days to get all your stuff, right? To get all the stuff. If you don't have it yet, you can get it. You can still get all these items. It's not hard to get. You can, it's available, and we'll go through these items, but now's the time to prep for it so that Saturday night, you're ready to go. You're ready to go with your Seder items, and you got the focus, you got a game plan, and you're ready to get it going. All right, so we are going now to look at the Seder plate items. I'm going to share my screen with you once again. Find the right screen to share. That should be it. Yes, it is. Okay, I'm going to fast forward. I skipped some of these. I'll show you what I skipped. I skipped a slide about matzah, morar, the Paschal lamb. Okay, now we're up to the Seder plate. Oh, what a beautiful Seder plate. There are different traditions, by the way, for the Seder plate, and it looks like this is not exactly the Chabad one, but it's close. So let's jump in. All right, so that's the Seder plate in general. Let's zoom in. Just on cue. All right, so what we have here are 6 items, right? From the top right, you got 1 clockwise, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1 in the middle is 6. Let's go through them in a bit of a different order, one at a time. All right, so here we go. On the top left, we have the beitzah, the egg. Is that an egg? Yeah, ish, maybe. I don't know. The eggs on my Seder plate don't usually look like that. I don't know. It looks like a stylistic egg, a brown egg with some shadowing on it. Either way, whatever works. Do you have an egg on your Seder plate? Top left. Top right is the zroa. What is the zroa? The zroa is the shank bone. It's either the shank bone from a lamb, or as is Chabad custom, you take a piece of a chicken neck. So either a shank bone or a chicken leg or a wing. Chabad custom uses a chicken neck. Why a chicken neck? We'll talk about that in a moment. In general, why these 2 items? So let's go through them one at a time. Let's start with the top right one first. The zroa. I don't think I have the ability to annotate. What is annotate here? Ooh, maybe I do. Hold on. 1 second. Spotlight. Now I'm just drawing on things. All right. Let me undo that. Okay. Give me a second. Let me see if I can do something here. Okay. Forget this. Let's go back. All right. I can't draw. I can't highlight. Maybe I can. I just don't know how. All right. The zroa, top right. The shank bone and the beitzah, top left. Why are these items there? The zroa corresponds to the Paschal lamb, which I mentioned before, back in the day, back in Egypt, times of the temple, for a good 1,000 years. This is what was happening at the Seder. They were actually having a Paschal. They were actually eating lamb, roasted lamb at the Seder. We don't have a temple. So instead of a temple and an offering and an eating the actual meat, we have a commemoration, a symbol, which is the zroa. So that's why some people use a shank bone, which is like a bone from an actual lamb. But we don't, Chabad Chasam doesn't do that because we don't want to indicate that we're replicating the offering. So we just have some sort of meat to loosely commemorate the Paschal lamb. So Chabad Chasam uses a chicken neck and we roast it over fire like the original was meant to be roasted. It's just chicken though. We roast it so much that there's pretty much no meat left, and it ends up being pretty much a roasted chicken bone. So that is top right. Top left is the beitzah, is the egg. What's the egg commemorating? Well, as all my kids know, it commemorates the bitter exile. Exile. Oh, yes, that just happened. And my apologies for that. So what is the egg? But what is the egg? Really, it's to commemorate another offering that we don't do because we don't have a temple. The Karban Chagiga. Let me explain. Every holiday had a holiday offering because it was a holiday, like every day in the temple. Every day had a daily offering, Shabbat had a Shabbat offering. Every holiday had a holiday offering. Passover had a holiday offering. In addition to the Paschal lamb, there was also a holiday offering. So there were two offerings, one, the Paschal lamb, and one, the general holiday offering. So to commemorate both of those offerings that we do not do today because we do not have a temple, we have items on your Seder plate. Top right, shank bone or neck, chicken neck, to commemorate the Paschal lamb that we don't have. The egg on the top left, that's the top right, top left, egg to commemorate the holiday offering, chagiga, that we no longer have. Why an egg? Why does an egg commemorate the sacrifice? A shank bone, I get, all right, it's meat to commemorate, but what's with the thing on the top left? What's with the egg? That seems so random. So in Aramaic, beitzah, egg, is pronounced, or the word is beya, not like Bella, like the name beya, but beya like BE apostrophe AH, beya, whatever. Beya means egg in Aramaic. Beya also means desire, and the idea is that God desired to take us out of Egypt with an outstretched arm, etc. There's another understanding that an egg is usually associated with, and some of you may know this. Actually, let me ask it as a question. What are eggs sometimes used for in Jewish tradition? It's not a positive thing. What are eggs sometimes used as in Jewish tradition? Unmute. Mourning. Exactly. After the passing of a loved one, traditional meal is eggs. Eggs are considered to be a feast of a meal of mourning. Why? Because eggs are round, and it symbolizes the circle of life, the cycle of life, birth and death, and renewal, and mourning and sorrow and grief, but then also bouncing back as well, and continuing to live life. So the cycle of life is represented by the egg, which is a round, I guess, round-ish food. And similarly, we don't have a temple; it was destroyed, but we commemorate the cycle of having a temple destroyed, belief in a new temple at some point with Mashiach to be rebuilt. So that cycle, that circle of mourning and destruction, but rebuilding as well, is symbolized by the egg, which is why that commemorates the Chagiga offering on the Seder plate. Not to confuse things, I'm going to pull up the screen one more time to show this to you. Again, here we go. The zroa, the bone, whether it's whether they're shank bone or chicken bone, it's top right to commemorate the Paschal lamb. The other one to commemorate the temple offering, the holiday offering in the temple, both of which we do not do today. These are kind of placeholders of commemoration. Make sense so far? Yes? Let's continue on our journey through the Seder plate. All right. Now, middle of the Seder plate, right there in the middle, what do we have? Well, I'm glad you asked. The middle of the Seder plate and the bottom middle. So both middles, middle center and middle bottom. we have the maror, the bitter herbs. Now, I'm not happy with this picture. I told you already. I'm not keen on this picture because what I'm about to tell you is going to be different than what you see in the picture. So then why am I showing this picture? I have that same question also. Trust me, I'm asking that question. Let me tell you what the maror is. The Talmud says 5 things that are kosher for maror. 5 things. Maror is bitter herbs to commemorate the bitter slavery, but also because God said in Egypt, eat matzah with maror and a paschal. So maror is OG, like original, thing that was commanded is maror. Well, what is maror? What's bitter? I mean, I can have sour stick. The kids eat the candy that's like sour. That's bitter to me also. Like, well, what's bitter? So the Talmud says there are 5 things that are considered bitter. Now, the Talmud uses, of course, a different language than English. And so the question is, well, what are these things? We know for sure 2 of them. One of them is romaine lettuce, and the other one is horseradish. And horseradish, if you've ever had raw horseradish, okay, here's what you do. Get a horseradish root, peel it, chop it up, right, or shred it, and then drop it in your mouth. Steam coming out of your face, right? That it's hot, it's bitter, it's spicy, it's hot. So that's one of the items, horseradish. But again, the other one that we know is romaine lettuce. And you might be thinking, romaine lettuce, we have romaine lettuce all the time. It's not bitter, but it is bitter. If you left it on the stalk, right? If you didn't cut it when it was cut and you left it to keep on growing, and then you would cut it or whatever it is, pick it, cut it, and eat it, it would be extremely bitter. In other words, it starts off okay, and then it gets bitter, which is a perfect parallel to the Egyptian exile. It started off in Egypt, all was good. We got down with Joseph, life was cool, Jews were cool, Joseph was great, everything was great. And then Pharaoh's like, hey, we're doing a national building project. Y'all want to join? And the Jews said, sure. And it started off fine. But then it went on a little too long and it got bitter, kind of like the romaine lettuce. So the 2 traditions, and Chabad, we do both. We take a stalk of romaine lettuce and shred it or chop horseradish, kind of fold it in, because the horseradish could like fall over the place, so you kind of fold it into the romaine in a little romaine pouch. You can order a burger now if you don't want like the glutens, right? You can order a burger in like a lettuce. You know what I'm talking about? Like a lettuce wrap. Yeah, but instead of a burger, just think of horseradish. Who does that? Yeah, we do that. And that's your bitter herbs. That would be replicated on both the middle center, and the bottom middle. Both of those are essentially the same. One is eaten independently, and one is eaten with a sandwich, which we'll talk about soon. Are you with me on what I just said? Again, we eat maror twice. One as a standalone item, bitter herbs, and one as part of the sandwich, which we'll get to soon, more specifically, because the Torah says to eat the matzah, to eat the paschal lamb with matzah and maror. So Hillel said, you know what that means? Combine them all in the first sandwich in recorded history. Take some matzah, throw some meat in there, get some bitter herbs, lettuce, little spice, little horseradish, and some meat and some matzah. You got yourself an original sandwich, and thus the need for a second dose of the maror for the sandwich. We don't have the meat today because we don't have a paschal lamb, and that shank bone we're not touching. So we have a sandwich without the meat. As the lady from Wendy's once said, where's the beef? We don't have that beef in the sandwich. We have just the matzah and the romaine and the horseradish. So just matzah and bitter herbs, but that's why we have 2 instances of the maror. I hope that makes sense. One we eat standalone and one together with the sandwich. I'm going to share my screen with you once again, and I need to point out something that's, I think, pretty important. And that is, let's go back, right? So these 2 things on a typical, at least Chabad Seder plate, would look exactly the same. Honestly, that looks like mashed potatoes in the middle. I'm just going to say that it looks like on this Seder plate, someone's eating mashed potatoes and pretending that it's bitter herbs, be like, oh man, that's terrible. All of this maror stuff, really bitter, as you're eating their creamy mashed potatoes. Anyway, it would look the same. Romaine lettuce with some horseradish in the middle of it. It's pretty spicy, it's pretty hot, and it's pretty marry. Now, if you're doing a Seder with more than one person, you're going to need more of everything. You're gonna need more mar because it's the mar, whatever fits in that little circle thing in the middle of your Seder plate is like food for one. So whatever you have, if you have more than one person at your Seder, you on your table, even if you only have one formal Seder plate, have some more horseradish and lettuce for the folks to enjoy. Are you with me on what I'm saying? I'm giving you a practical, like pragmatic advice. Does that make sense? Yes? Have more supplies. Okay, next, back inside. All right, back to our Seder plate. Oh, on the bottom right, we have the ever famous charoses. This is like the most famous or one of the more popular items on the Seder plate. I know this because, like any kosher caterer will tell you, that the orders of charoses are through the roof before Passover. It's like, I want a whole tub, like 3 pounds of charoses. Look, charoses is a sticky mortar-like mixture that is meant to a little bit diffuse the bitterness of the mar. So as we eat the mar, we don't want it to be like 100% bitter. So we neutralize it a drop with a little bit of charoses, by the way. The tradition is not to heap massive amounts of charoses. You can have a charoses party anytime you want. But on the night at the Seder, when you're eating the mar, you dip a little bit of your mar into charoses, and that's it, a drop of charoses. You don't need a lot to pull this off. What is charoses? I said it's a sticky, pasty, mortar-like mixture. Well, there's different recipes. Typically, it's comprised of nuts and fruit and spices. Chabad custom is to use a simple recipe of apples, pears, and walnuts with a little dash of wine to kind of give it a red look, to remind us of the plague of blood. So again, these are traditions and symbols. These are not biblical or rabbinic law. These are traditions and customs that have become mainstream and part of the Passover experience. So again, I want to go back to the big picture of the Seder plate so we can see where we're up to. We talked about, can you see my mouse as it moves around? Do you see that? Yeah. Oh, cool. Look at that. I do have a pointer after all this. Top right, shank bone, Paschal lamb commemoration. Top left, egg, chagiga, the other sacrifice commemoration. The middle and the bottom middle, the center, right? Both of these guys down the middle, bitter herbs. Romaine lettuce, horseradish, one or both, at least one, if not both, bitter herbs. Right side, bottom right side, the charoses, the sweet, sticky mixture, reminds us of the mortar that they built the pyramid or they built the buildings for Pharaoh with, but it's sweet and neutralizes a bit the bitter herbs. And now we're left with one more item on the left, bottom left side. What is that? That almost looks the same as this guy in the middle, but it's not. What is that? That is called the karpas. What is the karpas? The karpas is no, I know what you're thinking. It's not one of the stickers that lets you go into the left lane, right? When you go in the highway, it's not the car pass. No one should laugh because it only encourages me, please. All right, what is the karpas? Karpas literally means the vegetable. So what is the vegetable? I'm going to show it to you what it looks. Oh, here we go. Charoset is the more like paste. Karpas is the vegetable. Now, what vegetable is this? What is that, you ask? There are different customs. Some use celery. Some use parsnip. Some use radish. Some use cabbage. Some use raw onion. And some use a cooked potato. What is this on this particular version? I don't know. Is that parsnip? I don't think it's parsnip, right? Is that celery? Doesn't look radish, cabbage? I don't know. What is this? What does this look like? Who can identify what this looks like? Not that it's a mitzvah to figure out what they used in this picture, but I'm just wondering.
Parsley.
It looks like parsley, right? Do some people use parsley as karpas? There you go. So, hence the tradition. So parsley, right? Parsley, right? Sparsely plays parsley can work for your karpas. Chabad custom traditionally is to use either parsley or onion or potato, raw onion or cooked potato. Either or, it doesn't matter really. It's a vegetable that, as we'll see soon, part of the Seder steps is dipped into salt water to evoke the question. It acts as it's an appetizer at the beginning of the meal. It's like the waiter comes, would you like some parsley dipped in salt water? It's like, that's all you got? No, sure. Where's that bell? Anyway, bottom line is that this is used at the beginning of the Seder to primarily evoke the question of what is going on tonight from the child or from the inner child, which we'll speak about. Now, these are the 6 items of the Seder plate. In addition to all these, under the Seder plate, we have something very special, and that is matzah, 3 matzahs. In fact, 1, 2, 3. And these 3 are going to be used throughout the Seder as our matzah. We eat from the first and the second and the third. We eat from all 3 of them throughout the Seder. Again, matzah. I'm tempted to open the box, but I don't want to. I don't want to in any way tamper with the Passover seal on that bad boy before the holiday. So that's your deal. You got the 3 matzahs underneath the Seder plate. The Seder plate has the 6 items, 2 to commemorate the offerings that we don't have, 2 in the middle to commemorate the bitter slavery, the bitter herbs, 1 to neutralize it with a little bit of sweetness, and the other one, the vegetable, to evoke the curiosity, and the matzah underneath. Those are your food items on your Seder plate. Don't worry, you're going to eat more, which reminds me of a story. And the story goes that there was once a fellow who had never been to a Seder before. And he decided to go to check out a Seder for the first time in his life. And he's excited because he heard the Seder. He hears all these things about a Seder. So he's like, cool, let's be interesting to go to a Seder. He shows up and he's on an empty stomach. He's hungry. First thing is they knock down a glass of wine. And everyone's accustomed, everyone drinks a whole glass of wine. At this point, on an empty stomach, the wine is starting to go to his head, feeling dizzy. Then he eats a vegetable dipped in salt water. Then they start talking for a while, and he's starving, and he smells the food, and he's hungry. And then they pound matzah, some dry cracker he's never had before. And then they eat a bitter herb, and he's thinking his mouth is on fire, and he's thinking this meal is crazy. Never been to a more dysfunctional meal. It's so late. It's dragged out. The foods are bizarre. I'm out of here. He excused himself and he leaves. Comes back to his friend a day or 2 later. And his friend says, how was the Seder that you went to? Terrible. Terrible. He walks him through it. I can't believe you like this thing. The fellow says, "Ay, you left right before the meal. You were right. You went through all the challenges. You were right up to the meal and you left right before the meal." It's a reminder in life, right? We stuck it out through all the hardship of 2,000 years of exile. What, we're going to abandon ship right now? We're right at the end. We're right before the Mashiach, right? We're right before the end, the glorious conclusion to all this pain and suffering. What, we're gonna jump ship now? Just stay the course. Anyway, that's like a life lesson wrapped up into a story about the Seder, which we're about to go through. Are you with me on that? Make sense? All right. Before we do this is going to be the last step of our journey. It's going to be multiple steps in this last step. This is the last formal part of tonight's discussion. I'll tell some stories as well to round out and conclude and bring it all together. But before we do this last section, let me check in with you. Questions, comments, clarifications. Now is your time. Jump in.
The food on the Seder plate, is that
Yes.
just ceremonial, or are we allowed to eat the food off the Seder plate?
Excellent question. Number one, when no one is looking, I would highly recommend you grab some food because it could go long. I'm kidding. So certain things we eat and certain things we do not eat. So that shank bone, traditionally we do not eat. The egg, we traditionally do eat. So both commemorate offerings that we don't bring today, but one we do not eat and one we do eat. So the shank bone or chicken neck, nope. You can use it for your second Seder. We use the same thing. The egg, we make a point to eat. The bitter herbs in the middle, when we eat the mar and we eat the sandwich, those are knocked down. The charoset that we dip it into, we eat. And the vegetable toward the beginning of the Seder, we're dipping in salt water and eating. So those items, 5 out of 6, at the end, by the end of the Seder, will be consumed. Remember what I said before. If you're having more than one person at your Seder, right? If you have a few people, make sure you have backup. Well, I don't even mean backup. Make sure you have enough quantities of all these items and different bowls to make it, pass it around the table, and or have it strategically placed where everyone can comfortably grab these items. Or you make multiple Seder plates. But if you don't want to get, like, if you want to have just one formal Seder plate, just make sure to have the items at the ready for your guests.
So you can eat the items right off the Seder plate, except for the shank bone.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Typically, the leader of the Seder that has it in front of them will be the one directly removing those items from the Seder plate. And the others will either, if there's extra, like, let's say the vegetable for the dipping of the salt water, like my family always did potatoes, boiled potatoes, like maybe red potatoes or whatever, like boiled, like good flavor, like roasted, soft roasted potatoes, and you dip in salt water, it actually tastes pretty good. So, if you have like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 slices, so how much do you need to eat? It's just like ceremonies, you just eat a little bit. So you can give a few people from that collection. But so typically the one that has a Seder plate will start off. If there's extra that gets around, but you will typically, if you have more than just a few people, you'll typically need to supplement it with more stuff, especially the bitter herbs. You're supposed to eat a decent amount of those for your maror and your sandwich. And that little circle there in the middle, I mean, you can't get more than one person from that. So the one who's doing the Seder should eat from that. Yeah, it doesn't become holy where you can't touch it. No, other than the shank bone, it's all bets are off in a good way. Yeah. Any other questions of clarification? So just where to source the items on a practical level, get your shank bone from your local kosher butcher, Kosher Gourmet or Kroger or whatever it is, Publix, whatever, kosher butcher. You can buy an animal, a chicken neck, chicken wings, chicken neck, or shank bone. You can get them from any kosher butcher or kosher deli counter thing, whatever. They have access to these things, secret things like chicken necks. And then you can get your eggs. I mean, literally anywhere, wherever eggs are to be found. Your romaine lettuce, go to your local produce department. Horseradish, a little bit harder to find, but you can find it. This time of year, I think most grocery stores are stocking it because of Passover, as well as you can go to like Whole Foods or whatever it is, and you're sure to find it there. Your charoset is a mixture of, I don't know, apples, pears, nuts, walnuts, whatever. That's all that stuff is available. You just blend it together. Your parsley or onion or potato, again, anywhere. It's just a matter of sourcing it and preparing it and having it ready. Saturday night, this year it's Saturday night, and we're not supposed to prepare on Shabbat for after Shabbat. So ideally, you have your Seder stuff ready to go, like maybe in a Ziploc bag in the fridge, like pretty much ready to go, so that as soon as Shabbat is over and Seder time begins, it's about 8:30 here in Atlanta this year. So as soon as the time begins where you can get ready, just pull out your Seder plate, pull out the items, and you're good to go. So that's the ideal, because again, on a technical level, we don't prepare on Shabbat for after Shabbat, even though it's a holiday. It's because Saturday night is the onset of Passover, but we don't prepare one to the other. It would be dismissive of Shabbat to be focused on something that's not about Shabbat on Shabbat. Does that make sense? It's like Shabbat, 1 second, we're going to deal with what's coming next, right? It's just not a thing that we do. Now, if the Seder was a Monday night, no problem, right? Monday night Seder, sure, you have the whole Monday to prepare. But Saturday night Seder, can't do it on Saturday. You got to do it before. So that's what I'm saying. Like, what we're going to do is we'll have, we'll cook the eggs, hard boiled. Oh, I'm sorry. I should have mentioned this. The eggs, we hard boil the egg, not a raw egg on the Seder plate. Okay. So with hard boiled egg, that's why you eat it at the Seder. It's ready to eat. I don't think I mentioned it, but I should have mentioned it. So we'll have eggs, hard boiled, ready to go. The chicken necks, whatever, roasted, ready to go. The vegetables, the maror, ready to go. And everything will be ready to go. And then you just, you arrange it and you're good to go. You put out the matzah, cover it with the stuff, and boom. Now, you don't even need a Seder plate with a fancy Seder. If you want, get one at Judaica Corner or order one, or you may have one. You just need a plate, really. Any plate, any round plate. I mean, get a larger, don't get a small, like little plate, get a larger plate. And then just put you don't need little cups either. You just put the items down and just organize them and you're good to go. The rabbis, the Jewish tradition doesn't say you have to buy a silver Seder plate with glass bowls and that's how you do your Seder. It's not a thing. Just have your items there and that's it. Okay, now let's go through any other questions before we move on to the steps of the Seder. Okay, good. Let's move on to the steps of the Seder. There are 15 steps of the Seder. I want to reorganize them. We're going to do them in a little bit of a different fashion, just to make them a little bit more consolidated and easier to follow. Because I think that easier to follow is always ideal, right? Easier to follow is always ideal. It is 15 steps that we can probably divide down back into like 8 major things. So number one, first thing that's going to happen, again, we're going from Shabbat into the holiday. Okay, first thing that happens is candle lighting. You're lighting candles for the holiday. The way you light the candles is from a pre-existing flame. So before Shabbat, before you light your Shabbat candles Friday night, 24 hours earlier, also light a yard site candle. You know what I'm talking about? Those 24-hour candles? But go more than 24 hours. Get a 2-day candle or go nuts and get a 3-day candle. I saw they were selling 3-day candles at Spicy Peach this past week. And Tzippy, one of the owners, she's like, do you have a 3-day candle? I'm like, I have a 2-day candle, but like for me, that's gonna work. So get a multi-day candle, light it before Shabbat. You have a pre-existing flame. After Shabbat officially ends, the time is like, I think 8:33 or something, or somewhere around 8:30. So you're able to take from a pre-existing flame, light the holiday candles, and let's jump in. I'm going to share my screen and let's jump into that right now. Okay, so here we go. Candle lighting. Oh, look at that. You light your candles. As you light the candles, you say the blessings. There are 2 blessings. One is the blessing for the holiday, Lahadak Ner Shel Yom Tov, to light the candles of the holiday. And the second one is the Shechianu, which gives thanks to God for allowing us to celebrate this annual holiday once again. Here we have a translation of the 2 blessings, 1 and 2. So here's 1 and 2 in Hebrew, 1 and 2 in English, and 1 and 2 in the transliteration. In other words, Baruch, Atah, etc. So this is, if you were reading the Hebrew in English, that is what that would look like. Okay, so those are the 2 blessings. Then we move on to the next step. And again, I'm giving you different steps than your Haggadah. It's going to have 15 steps. It's going to be a little bit different, but I'm trying to consolidate this in a more logical way. So the first thing we have is candle lighting, done. Then we do Kiddush, known in the Haggadah as Kaddish, not Kaddish like for someone who passed away, but Kaddish, which is the Kiddush on Passover night. It's a unique Kiddush with a holiday theme, a Passover theme. And it also includes a little Havdalah action, mentioning that Shabbat has just concluded and we're now going from Shabbat to the holiday because it's Saturday night this year. So it's a unique Kiddush. Just follow along in your Haggadah. Oh, yeah, definitely get a Haggadah. Make sure you have one. And then do your Kiddush. So you start off with candle lighting, and then we're moving on to Kiddush. The way it works with Kiddush is, in addition to what we read, which you can find it in the book, in the Haggadah, the ideal is to use at least a revius of wine, which is, according to modern commentaries, 3.2 ounces of wine. At least 3.2 ounces. So get a cup that has at least 3.2 ounces and use that. Chabad custom is when you pour Kiddush or Kaddish, whatever it is, when you pour the cup for the blessing, you pour the wine in the cup for the blessing, you overflow it. Not like this picture. This picture has it just under. This picture, no one's hands are going to get wet. It's not going to drip in the jacket. In Chabad circles, that doesn't count. You got to go big or go home, and no one wants to go home. So you pour the wine or grape juice, whatever your beverage of choice is, ideally wine, but if not wine, then grape juice. You pour it till it's overflowing. You pick it up, you hold it in your right hand, and you do the blessing. On the night of Passover, everybody says the Kiddush, ideally. At least everybody says the blessing over the cup, over the wine, and drinks their own cup of wine. Typically on Shabbat or festivals, one person does the Kiddush and everybody answers and has a little bit of wine. On the night of Passover, everyone's supposed to have their own full cup of wine. Ideally, you drink the whole 3.2, at least you drink the whole quantity of the cup, which is at least 3.2 ounces. That's why I suggest just, if you don't want, if you have a big cup, right, and you drink 4 cups of that, your head can get a little bit dizzy and spinny at the end of that. So again, pro tip, this is what I do, is I try to find, I already have now, small cups that are at least 3.2 ounces. And that way you can drink the whole thing without, at least for me, without messing with my head. So that's what I do. And it's a suggestion. You can run with it as you wish. At least drink half of the cup, but ideally drink the whole. When I say cup, I don't mean the physical cup. I hope you understand what I'm saying, right? When I say drink the cup, no glass chewing or metal chewing either involved here. So drink more than half the quantities, if not the whole thing. Again, at least 2.2 ounces. So that's the Kiddush. The next thing we do is, let me just share my screen with you again. And by the way, when I share my screen, I can't see most, I can only see a few of you. Just unmute yourself if you have a question. Don't wait for me to ask. Just jump right in if you have a question or a clarification point, etc. Here we go. So after the Kiddush, so we lit the candles, we said the blessing over the wine, we drank the wine, now we wash the hands. Typically on a typical Shabbat meal, we would wash the hands, followed by the bread and the meal. But on Passover, not so fast. We wash the hands, but instead of eating bread, we take a vegetable and we dip it into salt water, right? Is that parsley again? That looks like parsley. Parsley into salt water, and you take a bite. And then you don't continue with the meal, you then have a conversation. And this is meant to do a few things. Number one, it acts as somewhat of an appetizer because it's going to be a little while till we get to the meal, because we first want to talk about Passover and have that conversation. As we spoke about earlier, we have to discuss the events and storytell it and dialogue it. We got to do all that before we eat, because once we eat, all bets are off. So we got to do that first. So here's a little bit of an appetizer. We have a little bit of food, but it really is also to evoke the child's curiosity, where the child is, even the inner child is saying, 1 second, we did Kiddush, we washed our hands, and now we're having a vegetable? What happened to the challah? What happened to the bread? What happened to the meal? What's going on here? Upon which we have the 4 questions, and we're able to tell the story with a bit of a Q&A dialogue. Again, that's just the structure of how the Seder works. I'm just trying to take you behind the curtain a little bit, not just what we do, but why it's structured this way. So that's the vegetable. We then break, even before telling the story, we break the middle matzah. There were 3 matzot. We reach our hand in, we take the middle matzah, we break it. The bigger half we put away for the afikomen, which we'll talk about soon, is the end of the meal that we'll eventually eat. We end off with a dessert of more matzah. The middle piece, the smaller broken half, which would here in this image be on the right side, right? This right half goes back between the 2 matzot, and then we begin to tell the story, so that we're telling the story kind of from a place of rags to then riches. What do I mean? What's the food on your table? Matzah, right? Poor man's bread, and not even a whole matzah. Well, some of them are whole, but the middle matzah is broken to symbolize a rags to riches story, poverty, not having just matzah, and not even a whole matzah, a broken matzah. Are you with me on that? The kind of like setting the emotion of like this rags to riches, this like, from the dumps to the heights. That's kind of the trajectory of the story. So we break that matzah to kind of even like impoverish ourselves even more, or to set the mood, set the tone, and then we launch into the story. We have the Magid, and that's now the story. Magid literally means telling the story. And at this point, that's the main part of the Seder, is telling the story. We have the 4 questions, the Manishtana, halayla ze mikol halaylot. We ask about, why do we eat tonight matzah instead of chametz? Why do we eat specifically bitter herbs? Why do we dip things in liquid? And, we dip 2 things. We dip the vegetable in salt water and the maror and the charoset. And why do we lean when we eat? Oh, I should have mentioned this before. My apologies. When we drink the wine, when we do the mitzvah items, except for the maror, the bitter herbs, when we do the mitzvah items, when we eat the mitzvah items on the night of Passover, we lean to our left. Why? Because it's a sign of freedom, right? We're not like rigidly sitting. We're relaxing. We're lounging. We're eating like azai. Now, I usually end up, just in full transparency, I usually end up like leaning like this, which honestly, I'm just being very transparent here, is usually a little bit uncomfortable for me because I don't usually coordinate a pillow and a whole thing. But the concept is really to be more comfortable than, like, imagine if you were like lying down, not lying, but like lounging on a couch. Like, think about like a lounge, like a hotel lounge, right? And like there's a couch and you're like just, having drinks and you're just like relaxing. That's comfortable, right? It would be very comfortable. Like, as opposed to like sitting formally at a table, with like a napkin folded and like this. Now you're royalty. You're able to relax. You're like a boss. You're like a king or a queen. You're the dude, right? Okay, that's the energy. Again, I usually end up like just like holding my body in a very awkward left-leaning position. But if you can find a way to relax, and maybe this year I'll work on that, that's really the way it's meant to be. Okay, so that's the Manishtana, and so now we have our dialogue, right? We have questions. Now we can talk about the story. Oh, why are we doing all these things? I'm glad you asked, because we were once slaves and all this happened, and then God and plagues and blah, blah, blah. And now here's where we are. So that's how we launch into the story, which again, that's really the bulk of your Haggadah book. The bulk is the telling of the story, which makes sense. That's what we're here for, right? And then after we tell the story, which again takes a while, the next thing is we eat the matzah. Remember I said before, we tell the story, then we eat the matzah, the maror. Okay, now we're talking about this in the order, we're plugging it in to the order of the night, right? So we lit the candles, we said the kiddush, we start off with a vegetable, appetizer, and question provoker. We broke matzah to be in that impoverished state of mind and context, questions, dialogue, and then we round up the dialogue. We drink second cup of wine. There's a second cup of wine that's drunk after we finish the dialogue, the story of Passover, and then we eat the matzah. We eat the matzah. The matzah is meant to be like when you have one of these big round matzahs, it's about a half a matzah. It's a kazayit. It's like an olive amount of matzah, but matzah is like a weird thing because it's big and it's wide, but it's, if you break it down, it's not that much mass. So you have to eat a decent amount of matzah. So, get chewing, my friends. That's the deal. So that's the matzah. Right after the matzah, you then eat the next item, which is the maror. Yeah, that looks like a big swab of, first of all, that looks like celery. Am I wrong here? Is that celery? This is celery right there. 100%. Whoa, sorry. That is 100% celery. Again, not for maror. Maror is not celery, but that's romaine lettuce on the left, right? On the left side, that's romaine. Okay, so you want to eat your romaine lettuce in your charoset, just a little bit of a thing. You want to eat charosas later on in the meal, fine, but you're not supposed to overwhelm. It's still supposed to taste bitter, right? It's not supposed to be bitter herbs. So neutralize it a drop, but you're supposed to taste the bitter. And again, go horseradish. By the way, it's really good. It clears everything. I actually enjoy, probably shouldn't say this because it's meant to be bitter, but I actually enjoy the maror. That's one of my favorite parts of it. It's very crisp. I don't know. It's hard to explain. Then we have the sandwich, right? We combine, if each one alone was great, imagine if you put it all together. If matzah was good and the maror was good, throw them together for the old sandwich. And that's the karo sandwich. So we spoke about it before. By the way, I mentioned before the biblical origins of it. The verse says, God said to the Jewish people in Egypt, that final supper, that last meal, God said to them, eat your Paschal lamb with matzah and maror. So there's 2 ways to understand it. Either at the same meal, have all 3 items, or in the same bite. So Hillel said, in the same bite. Today, we don't have the meat. Again, I know I'm repeating myself. We don't have the Paschal lamb. We do the other things, but we do a sandwich to commemorate that opinion that they did it as a sandwich.
What does korech mean, please, Rabbi?
Korech means, what's the literal meaning of korech? Does it mean folded? I think it means folded or wrapped. Am I right here? Yes. Can somebody fact check me on that? Korech means, I believe it means folded or wrapped. Yeah, I believe so. That's my understanding of it. But you definitely Google it on the side and see if you find anything. I believe that korech means
Google says wrap.
wrap. Yeah, like fold it over, wrap together. Yeah, that's what's in my head from the etymology of it. And so it means it's like a sandwich. By the way, Hillel, who's the one, it's called the Hillel sandwich. Hillel says that I'm not the originator of it. He claims that it was done from the beginning, that they ate it in the form of an altogether sandwich, which would make it the first sandwich in human history. And again, that original sandwich was literally the matzah, which is the starch, and the lettuce, the vegetable, and the protein, like literally what we would call a burger over at Fuego. I mean, it's kind of like the same thing. I mean, but very different, but kind of a similar concept, where you have your vegetable, you have your protein, you have a little, spice and whatnot, and you have, the bookends. Interesting.
Chabad.org says Hillel wrapped up.
Wrapped up. Yeah. Good. So it's wrapped. Yeah, korech means wrapped or folded. So it's not like literally folded because it's two pieces, but nonetheless. So that's what it looks like. And by the way, these are decent depictions of it. So that's the matzah, the mar, whatever. And then your korech sandwich, that's a decent depiction of what that will look like. And then now you're ready for the meal. Finally, you're ready for the meal. Now, I want to emphasize this. I haven't mentioned this yet, but many people jump to the meal. I told a joke about it, but many people jump to the meal and like the other stuff, like, oh, it's so boring, whatever. But if you think about it, really, it's Passover. It's once a year, right? Passover, if nothing else, we're meant to tell the story and to re-experience, to walk ourselves through the journey from slavery to freedom. We're meant to walk that journey again. And so we commemorate it by retelling the story and reliving it on some level. And so I would suggest the meal's going to happen anyway. No need to rush. No need to rush through the other stuff. Do it. Light your candles, say your kiddush, wash and eat the vegetable dipped in salt water, break your matzah, ask the questions, talk about the story, sing songs, ask questions, right? Ask yourself questions, have somebody else you questions, you ask them questions, have a dialogue. Eat your matzah, your mar, your sandwich, the combination of the two, and then you have your meal. It's fine. It's going to happen. You'll have your meal. Traditionally, the first thing we have at the meal is the egg, because notice, okay, the shank bone we're not touching at all. The mar and the two parts of mar, the standalone and the sandwich, are done. Your charoset dip is done. Your vegetable for salt water is done. So what's left? The egg. When do we eat the egg? Right now. Tradition is the first thing in the meal. As the meal starts, the first thing you eat is that egg from your Seder plate. And again, if you don't have your own Seder plate, because someone else is the one who has a Seder plate, so have multiple eggs at that table so that other people can also have the egg. And then you have a meal, whatever you usually have. You could have a fish, a salmon, a gefilte fish, soup, a chicken soup, a butternut soup, if it's in season. You could have brisket, you could have chicken, whatever you want at your meal, vegetarian, meat, whatever is your preference. The main thing is to have the festive meal. But at the end of the festive meal, you can even have dessert. But the official dessert is the afikomen, additional piece of matzah. The matzah that you hid away from that broken middle matzah, the larger piece you hid away, you bring that back, you put it away, now you bring it back, and now you eat it. What's the reason for this? Very simple. The last thing that you eat The last taste in your mouth should be matzah, the food of freedom. Matzah is like, you want to go, what? You want to go to sleep with some kosher Passover ice cream flavor in your mouth, or with a fruit cup, cut up fruit in your mouth. Matzah as the final taste. Matzah on Passover is called food of faith and food of healing. Eating matzah invigorates our faith in God and can bring healing, physical healing to a person as well. In Kabbalah, it's called both food of faith and food of healing. And so it's very special to eat matzah. And it's very special, I should mention, to eat hand-baked shmura matzah. Machines are great, automation is great, but you can't replicate the hands-on craftsmanship as that you have with the homemade matzah. So that's the last thing we taste, the afikomen, after which we open the door, we pour the cup of Elijah, we don't open the door yet, we pour the cup of Elijah, then we say the blessing after a meal, as we do typically, over another cup of wine, then we drink that cup of wine, then we open up the door for Elijah, which jumped the gun here a little bit. And why do we pour the cup of Elijah? Right? Why are we welcoming Elijah? Why are we opening up the door? What's going on with this? Well, it's the night of redemption. Elijah the prophet traditionally in Judaism is the one who hearkens, who is the hearkener, or there's a better word, the one who announces the coming of the Messiah, coming of Mashiach. So on a night of redemption, we hope and pray that we'll have the ultimate redemption from all of our own struggles with Mashiach. And so we want to welcome Elijah to our Seders and our communities and our lives and our world. And so hence the tradition to welcome Elijah the prophet. And if he's coming out to our house, might as well have a beverage for him to drink. So we pour the cup of Elijah for him, traditionally. Okay, then we say the grace after meals again. And then we conclude with Hallel, singing praises to God. Taken from the book of Psalms. These are a series of Psalms that essentially thank God for the blessings and the miracles that we have. And that takes us to the end, where we finish off the fourth cup of wine and we say, L'shana haba Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem. That Western Wall looks so much like the one that I painted Thursday night, but that's another story. So what's the point? The point is that we end with a hope for redemption, right? We talked about Elijah next year in Jerusalem means we hope that Mashiach is here. We'll have a temple. We'll all be together in one space in a good way, with a world that's healed from all of the pain, suffering, loss, and heartbreak that we all unfortunately experience. Next year in Jerusalem, I should mention the previous Rabbi said we don't have to wait till next year. It's not saying in a year from now we'll be in Jerusalem. It's saying already by then we'll be well settled in Jerusalem. May it come right now, and then by next year we'll for sure be there already. So that is that, and that's really the end. There is a tradition in some Haggadot that we say Chasal Seder Pesach, which means here ends the order of Passover. And we've concluded the Seder. Chabad custom is not to say that, because the Seder never ends, right? We don't conclude the Seder. Rather, its energy stays with us. Chabad's always different, always a little bit different. But we don't officially say Chasal Seder Pesach, which means we hereby conclude the service of the Seder, because we're meant to take its spirit with us into our lives, really, and into the night and the next day and the whole holiday, and really the rest of the year and the rest of our lives. So that is the structure for Passover, and that takes us to the end of the slideshow, which takes us essentially to the conclusion of this last piece that I wanted to share with you, which is the steps of the Seder. There's definitely a number of steps, but it's not, I think at least, it's not too, what's the word I'm looking for? It's all doable. It's all doable, right? You're going to light your candles, say your kiddush over the wine, wash your hands, dip the vegetable, break the matzah, tell the story, eat your matzah, eat your maror, eat your sandwich, have your meal, blessing after the meal, welcome Elijah, praise God, and that's it. That's a wrap. That's a wrap. That's a Hillel sandwich wrap. So as we conclude our conversation tonight, let me reiterate what I said before, which is the Passover is not just a commemoration of history, which is his story, somebody else's story. It's rather our story. It's our narrative, right? We all have areas in our lives that we are stuck in. And the idea of Passover is to realize that we have the opportunity, we have the ability to break out of those areas of constriction. May indeed it be so that we should break out of any limitation that we find ourselves in and experience freedom. And I want to conclude with one story. I promised some stories, and I'll end with one story. Story of the Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov lived in Poland, Russia, Poland, that part, Eastern Europe, that part of the world. And the Baal Shem Tov, the great tzaddik, the holy mystic, he wanted to move to the land of Israel. He wanted to live in the Holy Land. And as he was getting older, he decided now was the time. His wife had passed away, and he was alone. He had a daughter. Her name was Adel. And so he decided to travel with Adel to emigrate, to move to the land of Israel. And there are many stories of their travels. And it seems that every time they attempted to go to Israel, it wasn't in the cards. Well, here's one of the stories, and it takes place around Passover. So the story goes that he booked a ticket on a ship, on a boat, him and his daughter, to move to travel to Israel. Well, along the voyage, the ship encountered all sorts of setbacks, including rough weather. And at some point they had to lighten the load, so they threw over all of the suitcases, the luggage, overboard. And eventually the ship had to make an emergency landing, so to speak, emergency docking in Turkey, Constantinople. Today known as, what's Constantinople? It is
Istanbul.
Istanbul, right? The big city. So the story goes that there they are, unexpectedly in Constantinople, Turkey, the Ottoman Empire. That's not where they were planning on being, and it was a day before Passover, and there they are. They don't know anybody. They don't have any possessions. They don't have any money, nothing. Baal Shem Tov and his daughter. So they disembark from the ship. They take whatever they had, hand luggage, whatever. And welcome. Now, all right. So there's a Jew who's walking down the street, sees them. Clearly they were foreigners or they were visitors. And he says, you have a place for Passover, the Seder. You need a place to stay, a place to eat. They said, yeah, we actually do need that. We'd be very grateful. He says, sure, no problem. My wife and I would be very happy to invite you over as our guests, and you'll enjoy Passover and the Seders with us. Great. I mean, it's fantastic. So they move in for a few days. They have a Seder there. It's really lovely and wonderful. Well, after Passover is concluded, Baal Shem Tov, who we know had the power of blessing, so he turns to the man and his wife and he says, I'd like to give you a blessing. What can I bless you with? So they say, we really have everything that we need. We have money, we have a good job, we have everything, Baruch Hashem, we have a nice house, everything is good. One thing we have not been blessed with children. Baal Shem Tov says, okay, so it's my blessing that by this time next year, by next Passover, you should have a baby boy or a child by then. The fellow and his wife are overjoyed with the blessing from the tzaddik, from the righteous person. They say, Amen, thank you for the blessing. But in the meantime, the heavens were very upset. Why? Because the Baal Shem Tov had done something that he should not have done. Because it was not in the cards, it was not in the divine plan that this couple should have children. But when a tzaddik gives a blessing, it says, tzaddik goizer v'HaKadosh Baruch Hu mekayim, that a tzaddik decrees and God fulfills. So a tzaddik has a way of kind of forcing, so to speak, forcing the hand of God. So a voice from heaven that only the Baal Shem Tov could hear came down and said, Rabbi Yisrael, his name was Rabbi Yisrael, you've lost your entire share in the world to come because you violated God's will. You went against what God wanted, and you blessed this couple with a child. They're going to have a child, but because you defied God's will, you lost all your spiritual reward in the afterlife. The Baal Shem Tov responded by smiling, a great big smile. And he said, "Oh, thank God. I've been waiting for this moment. Because until now, as pure as I've tried to be in serving God for the right reasons, there's always been in the back of my mind, waiting for me on the other side is definitely going to be a big spiritual reward. But now that I know that I have no spiritual reward awaiting for me, I can serve God for the sake of serving God with no ulterior motives. Thank God for the opportunity to purely serve God." That type of commitment and dedication certainly caused a big uproar in heaven that matched the original uproar of him defying the will of heaven. And now another voice came down from heaven and said, "Rabbi Yisrael, you have resumed and regained your share in the world to come," just to make sure he didn't get what he wanted. No, but he got his reward back, and that's how the story ends. So what's the moral of the story? Number one, Passover. Again, it's COVID now, so it's a little bit tricky, but Passover, guests, making sure people have a place to be. That's a very important mitzvah. Or even if not inviting them over, but making sure that people have provisions. If somebody needs matzah, somebody needs more, whatever, somebody needs a shank bone, that if you know how to get it and you can help them get it, definitely help. If anybody needs help getting any items for the Seder, please ask, and I can help you get that. I have some matzah as well. So that's one thing. On another layer, it's about why we do things, motivation. And the goal is to do the right thing for the sake of just doing the right thing. So may this Passover be one of inspiration, be one of commitment, be one of freedom, be one in which we connect and plug into the energy of the day. And indeed, it should infuse us with a spirit of liberation. And we should be free of all the stuff that holds that all the things that hold us back. And may this Passover be one in which the world should continue to turn to a place of freedom, to a place of good health and openness, and all in a positive way. In due time, as the process unfolds, may this Passover be one of a breakthrough for all of us, and may we have only blessings and redemption in our lives. And let us say, Amen. Thank you very much for joining me tonight for prepping for Passover. I hope this helped you prep for Passover, and I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll stay on for a few minutes to answer any questions that you might have. But if you have to go, thank you very much for joining. And like I said, if you need any help, let me know. A few quick announcements, and then I'll open it up for questions. Number one, tomorrow night, we have our Passover jewelry workshop starting at 8 o'clock. Right, 8 o'clock tomorrow night. We still have some kits left. So if you want a kit, a jewelry kit, if you don't have one yet and you want a kit, let me know. We can hook you up with that. Tomorrow night, 8 p.m. on Zoom with your own kit, making jewelry at home, Passover themed, wine themed jewelry kit in honor of the holiday. It is awesome and gorgeous. So that's tomorrow night. Then we have this week a Torah studies class on Passover, which I may move from Wednesday night to Tuesday night because I may not be able to teach a Wednesday night due to some logistical challenges on my end. But I'm going to know tomorrow. I wanted to make sure that those of you that are on tonight are hearing it here first. So I may be moving again, the weekly Wednesday class, that's usually the Parsha class. This week will be holiday themed. I may be moving it from the Wednesday to the Tuesday, just because of some scheduling challenges on my part. But stay tuned. The official word will come out tomorrow. So either Tuesday night or Wednesday night. And then Saturday night, Seder. All right, I think that's it. Good. Questions, comments, jump in.
Luann wanted to know, after all these years, why are we still looking for Harvey Korman? I mean, why does he not know his way around?
For who?
Harvey Korman.
And that was Luann's question.
Right. That was my question, sure.
For sure. Yeah, that definitely was not Yaakov's question.
Right.
Ah, You're a sleuth.
I am a sleuth. They don't call me a sleuth for nothing. So yeah, the afikomen, by the way, so you're touching on a tradition that some families have, which is that some parties hide the afikomen. Some parents, in some families, the parents hide it and the children find it. In some families, the children hide it and the parents find it. Either way, it's a fun little game that can be played just to keep the interest going. But Harvey Korman, I think you meant afikomen that we're looking for. All right. Yes.
Wrong channel. Sorry.
Now you know. Questions, comments, jump in.
I have a very specific question
Yeah. Go ahead.
about matzah,
Yeah.
because I have celiac disease, so I can't eat like traditional matzah. And last Pesach, I was in Toronto, which has a significantly larger Jewish community, and
Right.
I could find gluten-free oat matzah,
Right.
but I haven't been able to find any here, and I couldn't find any online that would ship to Canada.
Oof. Yeah, that I was gonna say to check online. I wonder
Yeah.
who might be able to do that. Let me look into it and see if I can find. I know people that buy oat matzah. It's oat you said,
Yeah,
right?
but it has to be gluten-free.
Gluten-free.
Yeah.
So I know people that buy gluten-free matzah. So I don't typically buy it myself, but I will look into it
Okay.
and see if I can get some leads on it. If I find something, I will email you ASAP.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
sure. No problem. No problem. Questions, comments? All right.
I was in Maine, and then we were it was during Passover, and it was like this, a couple of Jewish guys in this retreat I was on, and we did a whole Seder, and I had all of my kosher Passover stuff that they didn't like because of all the overpacking. They gave me some terrible looks. But when we were doing the Eliyahu, the meditation on that, I literally, like, if you were looking in a mirror and you saw the one object, like the chair, Elijah's chair, I saw a chair, and going on into infinity, like every single year, we literally have been providing a chair for Eliyahu. I saw it go back generations
Wow.
to infinity. I'm like,
Interesting.
we're really actually doing something. We're really
Interesting.
actually doing this. I was blown away that actually we were actually doing something for Eliyahu.
Yeah, powerful energy. By the way, Anna, I just looked up quickly. I'm just Googling here also. I'm multitasking. I found Yehuda brand gluten-free matzah, matzah style squares.
Yeah, because I can find regular gluten-free matzah. It just, you
Right.
can't use it for the Seder.
Right. Yeah, no, I see what you mean. Right. You want
They don't make it easy for us people
Yeah.
with celiac disease.
I think there may be some, I remember there may be some here in Atlanta. The question is how to get it over. I'm going to look into this. All right, I'll put some work into this to looking to see if I can find you some.
Like, don't go out of your way, but thank you at the same
I'll look. No, it's I'm always up for a good sleuthing challenge. And by the way, if we have fellow sleuthers that want to find that are up to, doing some Googling and whatever for handmade gluten-free matzah, if you find
would it be kosher for me to use
so
to make
theoretically,
it?
yeah, theoretically yes, but your oven has to be kosher for Passover,
Yeah.
which is fairly easy to do because all you need to do is self-clean it. That to get it kosher for Passover, you just need to say if it has a self-cleaning setting.
It doesn't.
It does not. Okay.
No.
Find someone who does have one and who's
Yeah,
willing to
I will.
self-clean it, maybe. So then you could do it on your own, but you have to be careful. And typically we don't, most people don't bake their own matzah. It's usually done in a very high temperature oven, hearth stone oven, whatever it is, but it's possible. It's possible. So, but I think ideally find a supply of actual, matzah bakery
Yeah.
level of that type of matzah. So I'm gonna keep on looking.
Okay, thank you.
All right, pleasure. Oh, there
Oh,
we go.
yeah.
Lakewood
They
matzah.
don't ship to Canada.
Oh, they
That's
don't?
no, a
Yeah,
lot of
but here's the
places-
deal. But all you need is somebody to buy it and then to send it. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
That's
That's
true.
it. So what I'm saying is, bye, Karen. We'll see you. But yeah, I think that they're okay. So we'll look into it. Let's see if we can make it happen.
Yeah.
All right. We'll see you all. Charna, good to see you. Donna, great to see you. Luann and Yaakov and Sandrine and Lisa and Howard was on before, and all the others that were on before as well. Have a wonderful Passover. Have a wonderful week. Hope to see you tomorrow night for jewelry making as well. Have a fabulous evening. Laila Tov. To good.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Laila.
Shavua
Take care,
Tov,
everybody.
thank you.
Shavua Tov. Take care.